and let us all do we can to build a better future. All right, we are moving on to our final segment of the day. It's a two-parter, the last remnant of the California Ballot Initiative, and including Massachusetts. So, Kira, take it away.
And Miguel wants to know what I'm drinking. Some high-quality H2O.
Hey, cheers.
Cheers. Yeah. So, this one has my company logo on it, though. So
this is clear glass that has measurements. My favorite kind.
There you go.
Oh, ball jars. It's not a ball jar, though, is it? Ball is a brand, right?
Yeah, it's a ball
yep,
jar.
it's ball jar.
It's a ball jar.
Ball jar.
It's a wide mouth ball jar.
It is a wide mouth ball jar.
Wide mouth ball jar.
Okay, so here's the dealio. Roger and I overlooked, Roger Meadows and I, when we were working on these California ballot initiatives, he thinks that we overlooked an initiative, but I kind of think that it wasn't actually there when we did our first go through. Mostly because I know that I did an independent research on the ballot initiatives, and then I went back over Roger's notes to fill in any missing parts of the structure. And we both overlooked this, and the page looks different to me now.
I must say that you made, I think the most compelling point you made when we were setting up for the show was, it's very unlikely both you and Roger both missed this thing.
The exact same
I think that's the most compelling argument that this was just added.
I don't think we necessarily missed it, but there is another ballot initiative that is potential, and it is a legislative, for California, that is. And it is a legislatively referred constitutional amendment, and it's a real interesting one. So I'm glad, Roger, that you actually caught that, because I did want to share about it. So it's called the California Remove Involuntary Servitude as Punishment for Crime Amendment.
Nice. I'd like that.
I'm in.
And slavery in California. That'd be cool. It's 2022.
Yeah, come on, more democracy in theory.
And here's the deal, and this is going to be an opinion thing largely because I honestly couldn't find much about this. But it would remove the exception for involuntary servitude as a punishment for crime, thereby prohibiting slavery and involuntary servitude in all circumstances. As of right now, the California prison population is making 35 cents to $1 per hour for their labor. Does that mean now that they would have to be paid minimum wage if they chose? Is that what, involuntary servitude?
That'd be my guess. They'd also would that have the choice to work or not.
They'd have the choice to work or not, and then they would get, because is involuntary servitude, does that mean any pay at all?
No, it means slavery.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so my consideration when I was looking at this was, but they're still getting paid slave wages. Does that still fall in the same?
They're getting paid slave wages they can't say no to, that they have to spend immediately from a bar of soap.
Right, or a phone call or anything like that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So will that actually get rid of that? That is my question.
That means that they won't have to work, and if they're not making any money anyway, I'm sure some people would still work voluntarily just because it's something to do.
Yeah, probably get them out of
because if the alternate is that you just have to sit in your cell your entire day, then people will still probably want to work because it's something they could be doing. But I'm sure that if it's voluntary, then you have to pay them at least minimum wage.
Yeah.
So at least pay goes up.
Yeah, so I was looking all over, and it didn't explicitly say anywhere that I looked around, I poked around it, but I mean, I would certainly vote this in. I would definitely vote yes for this. Yeah. I'm just very curious about the actual,
I'm very surprised the legislator passed it. That actually gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah.
Hoping, especially in this crazy environment where, again, we have legalized slavery here in this country as our prison population.
Yeah, it's amazing. I would expect something like, if they pass something like this, I think the prison rate in California is going to just drop. Mm-hmm. Because all of a sudden there's not again, they're paying 50 cents or $1 an hour so that they can make $50 or $60 from a production level. And it's like, if you look at the corporate prisons that exist out there that are going through these processes, the whole reason they exist is that they pay wages similar to China. Mm-hmm. And that's their competitive advantage. And if they don't have that, well, they're not going to make a lot of money. And if they can't make a lot of money, slavery is not profitable enough for them. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, America.
Agreed.
Okay, so on that light note,
let's head to Massachusetts.
Let's go to Massachusetts. Yay!
But good on California.
Yeah, good on California. California's got a lot of ballot initiatives and potential measures, so check them out. There's about 45 of them. To be clear, the psilocybin did not get in. BT dubs.
I think if I had enough psilocybin, I would think it did. I don't know. I was. Never mind.
Never mind. Move on. All right. So we're in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, citizens may propose initiated state statutes and initiated constitutional amendments. The power of the initiative is indirect. And in Massachusetts, that means that the Massachusetts General Court has to consider any successful initiative proposals and pass. Once enough valid signatures are submitted, proposed statutory initiatives are presented to the legislature. Statutes may be adopted by the legislature by a majority vote in both houses. If a statute proposed by a valid initiative petition is not adopted, proponents must collect another smaller round of signatures to place it on the ballot. Makes sense, right?
Makes sense.
So the original amount of signatures is 80,239. And the second round, if it doesn't get passed by just a simple majority by the legislature, is 13,374 more signatures for a second round to get placed on the ballot. Righto? Okay. So initiated constitutional amendments following the submission of enough signatures must be approved by 1/4 of the legislatures in 2 successive joint sessions to reach the ballot. So that's for constitutional amendments. No secondary batch of signatures would be required. And citizens may also challenge legislation passed by the state legislature in the form of a veto referendum in which they'd need 40,119 signatures. There are no veto referendums that I know of right now in Massachusetts. And right now there is a legislatively referred constitutional amendment on the ballot. And that's actually the style of our first ballot measure that's actually on. And it's the only one that's actually on. And then we have 4 potential ballot measures after this. So the one for sure that is on the ballot is the Massachusetts Income Tax for Education and Transportation Amendment. So this ballot measure would create an additional 4% tax on the portion of income above $1 million for the purpose of providing funds for public education, roads and bridges, and public transportation. The tax would be levied in addition to the state's 5% flat income tax for a total tax rate of 9% on income above $1 million. And that 9% rate starts after their last millionth dollar, right? Their millionth and first dollar, then it's a 9% tax rate. Everything before that is 5%. The amendment would also authorize the $1 million threshold to be adjusted according to any changes in the cost of living in Massachusetts using the same method used to establish federal income brackets. And that would take effect on January 1st, 2023. Raise Up Massachusetts is a Boston-based nonprofit coalition made up of community groups, religious organizations, and labor unions. They're the ones leading the campaign in support of the amendment. The nonprofit coalition previously sponsored an initiative campaign to place the same amendment on the 2018 ballot, but it was removed by the Massachusetts Supreme Court after it was certified. The ballot initiative, according to the ruling, encompassed 2 subjects, a tax and a dedication of revenue, which violated the state constitution's requirement that the initiative contain subjects which are related or which are mutually dependent. The 2022 legislatively referred constitutional amendment is not subject to the same scrutiny regarding this subject matter as citizen initiatives, according to ballotpedia.org. And then arguments against this measure are the same of what you hear always, in talking points as far as raising taxes, particularly on rich people, which is no one will create any jobs because that's how economics works. Rich people will flee the economy.
As always.
Yeah, because people are always readily willing to leave their homes.
My son, Jimmy the First, is in this private school that's really good, and Jimmy the Second's in this private high school, and Jimmy the Third's in the college nearby, and my daughter, Jill the First, is in this. But we'll just get up and leave.
Let's leave. Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Nothing complicated about leaving. And then no one, and then that's class warfare, which was actually was actually a quote against this. So I was like, okay, I think I'd vote to support this measure. The median income, just for a little more context, in Massachusetts is $37,886, and the average is $43,761. And this would actually impact 3 out of every 1,000 Massachusetts residents.
Wow. You know, here's another, I guess, got inspired by another bill initiative we can throw in. All state and local representatives or representatives of any elected office automatically get hit with 100% tax if they use lobbying in order to get elected.
Oh, brilliant! Give them the screws.
And there's actually, I love what you're pointing to here, because there's actually a conversation I was going to have at the end of all of this. Based in some things that like Roger had written in his commentary with some of these measures. So we'll lasso back to that, because I think it's a good conversation.
Good. No, I agree with that. Anything to screw these politicians over, that's a brilliant idea. Screw them hard. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so so now we move on to measures that aren't for sure on the ballot, but on their way. All of them are initiated state statutes, which again needs just over 80,000 signatures to be considered by the court. The Massachusetts changes to alcohol retail licensing initiative would increase the statewide limits on the combined number of licenses for sale of alcoholic beverages for off-premises consumption, right? So like grocery store, liquor store, convenience store, including licenses for all alcoholic beverages and for wines and malt beverages. And that any one retailer could own or control from 9 to 12 in 2023 to 15 in 2027 and 18 in 2031. So basically, one retailer is allowed to have multiple licenses. So it's for, chain stores. Yeah, right? So beginning in 2023, the proposed law would set a maximum number of all alcoholic beverages. So beginning in 2023, this proposed law would set a maximum number of all alcoholic beverages licenses to any one retailer that they could own or control at 7 licenses unless they already hold more than 7 of those licenses.
Also,
right?
An exception for those.
So they're differentiated. Yeah, and an exception for those who already have a monopoly on the marketplace, which seems to fly in the face of this, but whatever. The proposed law would require retailers to conduct the sale of alcoholic beverages for off-premises consumption through face-to-face transaction, and would prohibit automated or self-checkout sales of alcoholic beverages by such retailers. It would alter the calculation of the fine that Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission may accept in lieu of suspending a license. The proposed law would also add out-of-state motor vehicle licenses to the list of forms of identification that any holder of a license issue under the State Liquor Control Act or their agent or employee may choose to reasonably rely on for proof of a person's identity and age. So basically, what they're saying here is that before they were not allowing out-of-state licenses.
Yeah.
And now they will.
Yeah.
Okay. I literally went in and I was like, wait.
Yeah.
Massachusetts doesn't accept out-of-state licenses for alcohol purchase?
Well, the thing is,
No, they don't.
Well, here's the thing. Well, here's the thing. We have to remember that when alcohol was made legal again in America, I know prohibition sucked.
Hey, guys, remember that time when we made a thing illegal that a lot of people wanted, and it created this huge organized crime thing that kind of destroyed a lot of the integrity of America? Glad we didn't do that again.
Yeah, good thing. Lesson learned. But the thing is, a lot of states, again, took their time in, catching up with the federal law. A lot of them still have a lot of policies that still date back from the 1930s. Of course, are they enforced? No, but they're still there. So it doesn't surprise me that Massachusetts kind of sitting on its hands on this. And plus, there is still some anti-alcohol groups still out there. Do they have the power like they did in the 1920s? No, and may they never do that again, because you're not taking away my booze. I need my alcohol. Okay?
Diggity.
Yeah. That's a no dice. But it doesn't surprise me that, again, Massachusetts would, or any state in particular, would have some sort of backwards law like that.
Yeah, there's still dry counties and whatnot. So.
Yeah. Oh, yes, there are.
And it's like, really?
It's why Jack Daniels doesn't taste good. No one gets to taste it while they're going through the process. They're in a dry county. I'm not making a joke. I'm just saying as it is.
All right. So the question heading towards the November 2022 ballot involves a dispute between packing stores and food and convenience stores about how many alcohol licenses should be available in different types of stores and what rules ought to govern them.
So 7-Eleven's really unhappy with this, unless they're already in and they're fine.
Well, the convenience store chain Cumberland Farms has for years been pushing lawmakers to let food stores obtain an unlimited number of licenses to sell wine and beer. And the Massachusetts Package Store Association, which represents Massachusetts-owned liquor stores, is framing the initiative as a compromise. In written testimony, the association calls the ballot question a necessary check to repeated moves by large corporate interests seeking marketplace dominance. So basically...
I'm feeling better on this.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay. Yep, I would pass this.
Seems
I
reasonable.
really want to know in that who has the +7 access. That's important to me.
Yes.
Damn, I should have looked that up. Yeah. There you go. So Massachusetts Package Stores Association is sponsoring this initiative, and the deadline to submit all of the second rounds of signatures is July 6th, 2022. All of these have already passed, just to be clear. Oh, I didn't say this. They all passed a first round of signature gathering.
Okay,
right?
good.
Yeah. So they are on the second step of signature gathering.
So perfectly for this, it's past its first round.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good.
There we go. All right. So next up, this next initiative it actually takes up two initiatives. So I'm just going to differentiate them very quickly in this one story, just so we know. And it's the Massachusetts App-Based Drivers as Contractors and Labor Policies Initiative. The Uber and Lyft. It's basically Prop 44 from California, right? Okay. So, and I was, as many of you know, during the 2020 election, California voters approved an initiative that classifies app-based drivers as the independent contractors and adopted labor and wage policies specific to app-based drivers and companies. The initiative in California passed 58.6 to 41.4. So this is very similar, if not the same. The ballot initiative would define app-based drivers as independent contractors who meet the following criteria. They're couriers of a delivery network company or drivers of a transportation network company. The companies do not prescribe the time and days worked by the courier or driver. The contracts with DNC or TNC, which are the, just to be clear, the delivery network company or the transportation network company, DNC and TNC, cannot be terminated for rejecting service or delivery requests. And couriers, let me read that again. Contracts with DNC or TNC cannot be terminated for rejecting service. So that's actually pretty big.
When I was driving for Lyft, like if you didn't take it, if someone popped up and it was really bad if you ignored it.
Yeah. They're actually, I think the reason I took a deep breath before going into this one is like, it's a fairly sticky one and it's going to take some, conversation, I think. As I go through this, a lot of this starts to sound really, really good. And I remembered doing this story about Prop 44 whenever it was, going to be on the ballot. And I did remember a little loophole, which I'll share with y'all in just a little bit. So that's, and that's where they get you. Okay. So hold on to your hats. I'm getting there. And then, so you can't get fired from rejecting a service or a request. And then the couriers or drivers are not captive to any specific DNC or TNC and are not restricted from performing other work. Great, right? All sounds great. Examples of companies that hire these kinds of people are Uber, Lyft, DoorDash. You get the idea. The initiative would enact labor and wage policies that are specific to app-based drivers and companies. So basically, if you're working, payments of the difference between a worker's net earnings, excluding tips, and net earnings floor based on 120% of minimum wage. So, basically they're wanting to ensure that they're getting paid 120% at the end of the day, a minimum wage. For drivers who average at least 25 hours a week, they'll require companies to provide healthcare subsidies equal to 100% of the average ACA contribution. For drivers who average 15 hours, but less than 25, per week of engaged time during calendar quarter, require companies to provide healthcare subsidies equal to 50% the average ACA contribution for the applicable average monthly health connector. And then the provider, it also would require them to provide drivers with earned paid sick leave at a rate equal to either the driver's average hourly earnings or the guaranteed net earnings. It would cover under Massachusetts paid family and medical leave unless written declination is received. So basically, paid and family leave, they'd get covered under that. It would require companies to provide or make available occupational accident insurance to cover at least $1 million in medical expenses up to 156 weeks. So this is, okay. Require the occupational accident insurance to provide disability payments of 66% of a driver's average weekly earnings before the injury suffered for up to 156 weeks following the injury. And then it will require companies to provide or make available accidental death insurance for the benefit of the driver's spouse, children, or other dependents when the driver dies while using the apps. So, I was like, oh, wow, like this sounds pretty decent, right? And there are two versions of this, like I said at the beginning. Version A, which would require paid occupational safety training before accessing a company's platform or mobile, and the other one doesn't. Yep, okay. So I've seen a lot of interviews and I've talked with a lot of ride-hailing drivers who actually like this legislation. So, I've personally had conversations with those folks, but I also know that there's a huge point of contention with the fact that the initiative would define a driver's engaged time as the time between accepting a service request and completing that request.
Oh, yeah. That was a huge
Not the amount of time.
When I drove for Lyft, half the time was waiting for someone to do something. So that is a huge deal.
It's a huge deal.
That's like, hey, you're only paid at the warehouse when you're physically lifting a box and no other time counts.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I could never see past that. To me,
yeah.
I worked at the warehouse.
I see what they're doing though.
It says engage. It says engage time, and then they kind of sneak it in at the end, and they just say engage time. These engage times are, I don't know where it is on this page, but it's like, and engage times are when they accept a request and when they drop them off. Not the amount of time you're sitting on the app waiting for a
Here's the
request.
flip on that, though, where I can see that, like, I could theoretically drive to a very secluded area, turn on my app, and just sit there.
That's also true.
So I can get that, but there has to be a better way to skin the cat.
Yeah, 100%. Because, I mean, if you're sitting on an app, you're also being tracked. Yeah. And so if you're sitting, in a desolate area, like they're going to be like, what the fuck are you doing, dude?
What are you doing there?
Maybe they have something like that, but they will also credit 15 minutes after the pickup drop off of time. If they did something like that, I would feel that would fill in the gap.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something better to do because, after considering these loopholes, the UC Berkeley study noted that basically the pay would be it would average around $5.64 an hour.
It's exactly how it worked out. Because it's like if they're talking 20 to 25 hours, what they're really saying is you physically have someone in your car and you're driving 20 to 25 hours, which means, based on at least my experience, that means you're working 40 hours a week or more.
Well, these engaged times amount to about 67% of the driver's working time, so you're not getting paid for 33% of your work.
Oh, that's much better than what I experienced.
Than what your experience was? Yeah.
And the way that the apps work, the more you drive, the more they prioritize your ability to pick up customers. And so if you're new, you're extra screwed.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, and also, it does sound like, it has some perks and everything, but you also want to make sure to always check who are the donors, who's pushing this, right? And as far as financial spending in support of this has raised over $17 million in the state of Massachusetts, which is bonkers. Yeah. Opposing it, $935,000.
America, all right.
So I have a feeling I know who's going to win. But it's, just follow the money, right? Money. I wanted to make space for a little bit of Roger's 2 cents on this because he is a ride-hail driver.
And also to point out, too, again, in New York State, him and a lot of other great activists and organizers are trying to do a worker co-op rideshare, that are doing there in New York State. He's doing a lot of great stuff. So again, shout out to Roger Meadows. If you're not following him on Twitter, please do so. He's doing a lot of phenomenal work, and he's been adding a lot of great stuff, especially here to Hardlands Media.
Yep. So, and he says, on its face, just reading the legislation, being a ride-hail service driver myself, it looks okay. But then you look at who is for it and who's against it. And then I told you guys supporters include all of these folks. And then people who are against it are 9 different unions, including Independent Drivers Guild, SEIU, Boston Independent Drivers Guild, also ACLU's against it, Action for Equity, Coalition for Social Justice. The list goes on and on. They're, definitely in the double digits of organizations against this.
And by the way, another thing to throw in, I remember from when I would drive, gasoline becomes a very relevant factor.
Yeah.
When I would drive for Lyft, 20% of any revenue I got, 25, depending on how traffic was, would go right into gas. That's going to be 50% right now at current gas rates.
That's also true. That's a great point.
So even if you're making,
I didn't even consider that because I barely.
So even if you're making $6 an hour, which actually seems reasonable based on that document, you're really then spending for every $6 you make, you're spending $3 on gas.
That's not good.
Yeah, so Roger goes on to say, specific to the ride-hailing service industry, I want to mandate that companies that insure cars. This was a really interesting point. Okay, so we discussed it and thought maybe it's null and void because now they're saying that they'll cover accident insurance up to $1 million in medical and blah, 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 blah. And originally Roger hadn't seen that portion of it and he mentioned this, but I wanted to mention it again anyway, because I do think that there's an issue here. So specific to ride-hailing service industry, I would mandate that companies that insure cars create a division within their company that insures ride-hailing service drivers, whether they're using the car for personal use or to drive family and friends around, or when using the car as an office workplace to drive clientele around. So basically, Roger's point, he goes on to say that when he went to go and get insured, one of the first questions that they ask you is, will you be using the car for ride-hailing services? And just like the question on the application that asks you if you were ever convicted of a crime, and if you actually answer truthfully, you won't get the job. So drivers end up lying to the insurance companies about what they're doing. So what happens is if you're a customer and you get into an accident and you try to call Allstate as well as Uber to try to get some money from them, they'll end up telling you that you're a customer and that your driver violated the terms of the agreement. So, but my question is that even if they have that $1 million safety, the insurance agencies still are not required to cover you.
I would, yeah.
And that still poses a problem.
Yeah.
And they still can pump up your premiums because they know, hey, this person is driving and using their car as their job. Mm-hmm. So I think that this issue will continue to be an issue,
so that's
in my opinion.
Even more money you got to spend out of your revenue.
Yep, exactly. So I would vote no on this. All right. So that had 2 versions, and then this is the last one. Woohoo! And since the so next up and last is the Massachusetts medical loss ratios for dental insurance plans. This one's pretty straightforward, right?
In America, I just wanted to add in something like dental care in America is like one of the things that we're severely lacking in this country, and
the only thing keeping us going is fluoride in the water. I'm going to say it again. I don't hate fluoride.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I
don't argue with that. Yeah.
There you go. Right.
So this proposed law would direct the Commissioner of Massachusetts Division of Insurance to approve or disapprove the rates of dental benefit plans and would require that a dental insurance carrier meet an annual aggregate medical loss ratio of 83%. Right now, it's 88% for the medical loss ratio. And a medical loss ratio is a measure of the percentage of the premium dollars that a health plan spends on medical claims and quality improvements versus administrative costs. If a carrier's annual aggregate medical loss ratio is less than 83%, the carrier will be required to refund the excess to the individuals and groups. So basically, in easy terms, this measure would seek to put guardrails on spending for dental services by requiring insurance companies to spend at least 83% of their revenues on dental expenses and quality improvements.
I'm for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having insurance that you can use, because that's like everything about dentistry. It's like You know, it's like, oh, you did a thing. Well, we're not going to cover that because you.
Yep. So then Roger's commentary, and this also leads me into the bigger conversation that I want to touch on before we wrap up here, was how about we put all these insurance companies out of business with a ballot initiative from Massachusetts M4A and call it a day.
There we go.
Why make it simple when you can have it be useless and complicated?
Yeah, and that's really the point in all of this that I wanted to make, because Roger actually went into a whole other sort of tangent in another area that he was writing and commenting on, where he talked about, you know, creating an administration that did the same thing for worker co-ops that the Federal Small Business Administration does. File a right of first refusal ballot initiative once a company grows beyond a certain threshold before they automate, before they outsource out of state, or if they already have, if they've shown to have a record of egregious and abusive behavior at putting the public trust, the environment, workers, and consumers at risk, that they are mandated to make an offer to their workers to purchase the company with government help, thus restructuring it into a worker cooperative. Like, these ideas are so big, right?
Yeah.
They're just big ideas. And if we have the ability to put, you know, measures in front of voters that we know the vast majority of people would agree with, like, we have that opportunity, and we have them in ballot initiatives. And I feel like a lot of, there are ballot initiatives that are like out there trying to do big things or bigger things. And I could see just bowling them over with, like, no real actual structural change on a state level. So I just wanted to bring that up, that like, oh yeah, okay. So now more money will be spent on dental stuff and improvements versus whatever. But we're still working under this silly system where, like, a company that knows nothing about actual health or dental work is making the decisions on what dental work we get. Yeah. That's crazy.
Well, the thing is, let's also look at this. We have corporations controlling our media that have no business in journalism whatsoever. You have corporations getting involved in every single facet of American life that have no business in any of those fields. And it's a sad fact in this country that corporations are really the more favored constituents to our ruling class.
And Akira, I have a hard counter for your really thought-out argument. Well, the medical industry spends a lot of money on TV ads, so be quiet.
Yes, very important.
Very important right there.
I mean, if their TV ads were maybe a little more entertaining, I might
it's just
jive with that. But
every commercial for medical is always some person jogging while they tell you all the ways that thing can kill you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's always, be sure. Oh, wait.
I love the SNL spoofs on those things.
Wait. Side effects will include blindness, loss of taste, loss of sexual activity, diarrhea.
There was one that went on for so long one time. Mark and I were in another room, and it just kept going on and on. We kind of like looked at each other, and I said, is this a spoof? And we actually went into the other room to look, and like, nope, it's not a spoof.
It's all real. So anyway, but notice everyone's dancing, playing guitars, they're doing this,
look how happy
doing that.
I'm in.
I know. So there we go. All right. So as a final note for this story, again, Kira leading the way, covering ballot initiatives. Shout out again to Roger Meadows, who's got involved with ballot initiatives.
Yep.
And be sure to, again, to follow Roger Meadows on Twitter, because he's been doing a lot of great stuff and talking about a lot of worker activities.